Hi, I'm Randy Cantrell. Welcome to the Year of the Peer podcast with Leo Batari. This podcast is based on a simple truth. Who you surround yourself with matters. Author and keynote speaker Leo Batari will interview thought leaders from all walks of life who will share how they leverage peer advantage and show you how engaging your peers more purposefully can hold the key to greater success in business and in life. Today's guest is Marian Salzman. Marian is the CEO of Agile PR US, named one of the world's top 5 trend spotters, bringing the term metrosexual to the world in 2003. Marian is one of the most awarded female public relations executives in North America. Prior to joining Agile PR and the Global Collective, Marian was the Chief Marketing Officer at Porter Novelli, CMO at JWT Worldwide, and Chief Strategy Officer at Euro RSCG Worldwide. Author or co-author of many books, her latest, written with the Agile PR team, Agile PR, Expert Messaging in a Hyper-Connected, Always-On World, is now available. We welcome Marian to the show.
Marian Salzman, welcome to Year of the Peer. It's so wonderful to have you here.
Thanks for having me.
Oh, of course. Been particularly excited to talk with you for 2 reasons. One, as CEO of Agile PR US, I want to really talk about high-performing teams and also how peers have influenced you in your life. But I also really want to talk about your new book, Agile PR. Really excited. And one of my favorite things, of course, about the title is basically in the title and under your name, you talk about it as with the Agile PR team, and you give them credit, not just in the acknowledgments page, but right on that front cover. And since this show is all about who you surround yourself with matters, I'd love for you to talk about your team and the role they played in helping you write Agile PR.
Actually, it's really interesting because that was a deal breaker for me with the publisher. I didn't care about the size of the advance. I didn't care about a number of things, but I was really insistent that it had to be Marian Salzman and the team at Agile PR, because while I am their CEO and their leader, and while if somebody's angry, the buck stops with me, the reality is the best work doesn't start or stop with me. It's stuff that I zoom in on, that I get excited about, that I can talk about pretty knowledgeably, but I'm not the one in the trenches. So I felt like since we were telling stories of our great client work, only a fraction of that work is actually my work, meaning me, Marian, by myself, and it's really all about the team.
So when you think about your team, talk about them a little bit, because obviously you think quite highly of them, and I'd love to know not just about this team, but throughout your career, you've seen really high-performing teams and teams that work really well together and extremely productive, and maybe others not quite as much. And I'd love to know what you feel are some of the differences between teams that perform at a really high level and those that are still struggling to do that.
So let's start off with, even here, I have multiple teams. I have some truly awesome, unbelievable, fall on the sword and protect teams. I have some teams that are pretty good. I don't have some teams that are real terrible, but I have some, there's a range. And what's the differentiator? I think probably passion, probably curiosity, and probably also willingness to stop watching the clock. So people who are still caught up in the agrarian model of I show up when it's light out, I leave as it's getting dark, they have this baggage of the clock. It doesn't mean they have to do awesome work while they're here or while they're working, but it means that the clock gets in the way sometimes of that last stroke of brilliance or that extra phone call or that extra email or whatever it takes to go from good to great. So I think the biggest differentiator for me is how all in are you, how passionate are you, and how much do you want to make a difference, whether it's make a difference for us as a company, make a difference for the clients, make a difference for the cause. Any of those things matter. Those are the people I prefer.
So one of the things when we were doing research for the Power of Peers is we also kind of learned and I think really come to find out that peer-to-peer accountability was real important. It's not so much about wanting to please the boss, but they are really accountable to one another, and they don't want to disappoint one another any more than they want to disappoint the team leader. Do you find that to be true as well?
So I definitely think that there is a group of people. I think a lot of Gen Xers and a lot of older millennials that are very committed to the team. And they'll take a bullet for the team and they'll go down into the dark shadows of the water for the team. and they put it first. I think there's an older group. I mean, I don't want to make it just about age, but I think there's an older Gen Xer, or maybe, yeah, it's an older Gen Xer probably, who's a little bit more me focused. And as a consequence, they don't necessarily fit with the team. They tend to be lone rangers. They can be awesome. They can be really, really effective, but I don't know that they make the same contribution because they want to talk about hierarchies, how many years they've been on the job, how much they've accomplished. What I think this next generation right behind them is much more about what are we going to do? And so I think it's the I versus me. As soon as I hear people say I get allergic. I'm allowed to say I as with allergy because allergy is all me. But it's like when I hear about what we do, none of us could do what we do alone.
Right.
We couldn't. It wouldn't be good, and it wouldn't be fun, and it wouldn't make a difference.
Do you have any particular, other than the not use of the word I, but any particular philosophy about leading a team and having it be a really successful team? How do you approach that?
Here's one that isn't always so popular. I couldn't care less what you did yesterday or last month or for the last 10 years. I couldn't care less what titles on your business card. If I had my way, I would abolish all titles, starting with my own. I really want to hear about what are we going to do to make it better, different. How are we going to innovate? So I don't want to hear about everything you've done that's led up to this place where you now have this suggestion. What's the suggestion?
Yeah.
So that's a big differentiator. I'm not interested in the hierarchies. I mean, that's controversial. It's not necessarily fair either. I'll be perfectly honest. I'm well aware that prejudice towards what are you going to do tomorrow versus what did you do yesterday isn't always a fair one.
So in terms of, so let's look at, yourself for a moment, not only just as a team leader, but as someone who's had a career where you've surrounded yourself with, I assume, some really good people along the way, people who made a difference early in your career and people who, you continue to, consult with today. Any particular individuals that you would, name in that regard? Any people that you really have made a big difference in your life, both earlier in your career or right now?
Sure, I've really never had a bad boss. I mean, I always say I never look at a job description. I don't even know if I really understood there was such a thing as job descriptions. I always was looking to figure out who was I going to work for, what could I offer them, and what could they teach me. So going all the way back to the early days at Chiat Day, then looking at going to TBWA in Europe. I mean, I was choosing bosses. I have a new one that in the last few years I've added to my repertoire of things I look for. And that is, I don't know that I'd want to work for a man who had a non-working wife. That is a new revelation. I don't know that I ever thought that one through before. But I think that you want to surround yourself with people where you can understand their motivations. And I guess I don't mean somebody who has a wife who's at home with a small child, but I mean, I think I'm much more aware of sexism than I ever had been in the last 2 or 3 years. Ironically, I don't think I was ever really subjected to sexism coming up through the ranks. But in my current role, I think I'm aware of how much more relevant those isms are. And I'm much more conscious of doing what I can to overcome them. Probably not all that well, because I don't think any of us can. Institutionally, I think these things are embedded.
Okay. Interesting. So let's pivot a little bit to Agile PR, right? Well, let's be agile in this conversation here, because I will tell you, I really loved reading the book. Really enjoyed it very, very much. And, first of all, I guess before we get started with that, I'd love for you to just talk about what inspired you to write it, why you felt it was so important, and what you hope the major takeaways are for people who read it.
So there's a funny story about this book. Back in about 2006 or 7, I tried to sell a book on local, that local was the new global. And I guess it was a good idea because it's become the trend that's defined the next 10 years. But all the publishers I went to thought it was a terrible idea, rejected me out of hand. I threw the proposal away. I went and sulked. And I stayed in touch with a woman who had edited a number of books, and purchased and edited a number of books that I'd written years ago. Her name is Ari Stewart. Fabulous woman. We were having lunch, and I was now, for the 971st time, trying to convince her we need to do a big trend book. She's like, no, we need to do a book on Agile PR. So I can't tell you I invented the idea. It was someone else's. She just gave me the title. She didn't tell me what she meant by it. And then she said, by the way, since it's about agility, I'd like it in 90 days. And then she signed the contract with us. And she quit her job about 4 days later. So before we had truly come to a definition of agility, I'd signed up to do the book because she was a fabulous editor, and I had 3 previous great book experiences with her going back a decade or more. And there I was with like the proverbial look at the screen, and I was like, oh, how? What the heck am I going to do?
All right.
The great irony of it is the more I have learned about Agile PR since I finished the book, the more I recognize that I really only scratched the surface, because today it is all about placing a story and amplifying a story. Without the boost, you don't have agility. Without the boost, you don't have any sense of continuity. I think some of the truths that we learned in the course of researching the book, and I say we because I dragged the whole team in. Once I signed up for this life sentence of 90 days, so too were all my best people dragged in on it. So it was really a question of looking at our stories, looking at the tales we could tell. We wanted to be very sensitive to client needs, not tell stories that people didn't want told, but tell stories where we felt we had their support, and say, what are the lessons learned? How do you now speed it up? How do you now make it 24/7? How do you now make it both global and very, very local? How do you understand the parallel universes between traditional and social? Where does virtuality and reality come together? So it was a very long 90 days. I stretched out to 100 days, so it wasn't very agile of me to get a 10-day extension. There you have it. And we got it done, and it was very pleasant to finally see the actual real book.
Wow. Well, so when you said that, it was kind of funny, because you said the title was given to you, not necessarily the meaning, but if you were to define Agile PR, in a sentence or two, how would you describe that? How did that meaning come forward for you in terms of writing it?
It's so interesting because I spent about a week of my 90 days thinking that it was all about everything that happened in the software industry. How do you speed things up? How do you fast fail? All that. And then I spent another week focused on how do you move into the kinds of things that we were familiar with, things like political campaigns, like when Wycliffe Jean decided he was going to run for president of Haiti. You couldn't turn the clock off. You weren't going to get paid for your time. You were all in, and it was 24/7 for as long as it lasted. Was it that kind of agile where you're making all of your decisions on the fly without necessarily access to all the facts? Then I started thinking maybe it's really about a different way of working, a more stealth way of working, where you cut down your beta times. And I think the synopsis that I came to at the end of that was it's all 3 of those things, but it really is about thriving in today's always-on, hyper-connected world where everything is connected. I could be talking, I'm not doing it right now because it's my hands, but I could be talking to you, and every time you ask me a question, I could Google it. And that's part of agility too, is like there's no such thing as you don't know. No, you just haven't Googled.
That's right.
So it's building together all of those learning experiences and then trying to come up with something that was readable, credible, that I also felt that generationally, I feel like my whole life I've been told to lie about my age. So for the first 15 or 18 years of my career, they'd always say, could you please tell people you're older? And then for the last 10 years, it's like, could you please act and be younger so you have credibility to the young markets? And I was very conscious I wanted a book that if I stood in front of smart PR students or comm students or even sociology or anthropology students, they would get something out and not say, what is this old lady doing with a book? So it was really a juggling. And in terms of agility, it's also, agility is personal flexibility, right? It's my ability to go to Pilates class and keep up. So to me, I looked at every definition of the word and bundled it together and made my own.
What I love too is because you got the team involved, and when you think about learning, it's best when it's really kind of a socially constructed experience. So you think about here, you've got this whole team. You spend your 90 to 100 days. You're working together, not only in terms of writing it, but really learning it and embedding that learning. So how has Agile PR changed the way you may serve your clients today versus maybe 6 months or a year ago?
So one thing is I don't believe in place anymore at all. Geography is completely meaningless to me. In fact, this is probably doing this right now is the best screen I've had with anybody where I'm doing this kind of meeting. But when we set out to do the book, I worked with one team member who was in Brooklyn, one team member who was in Charlottesville, one team member who was in Nashville, one team member who was in Tucson. Ironically, I was also in Tucson and only met with that person once for a cup of coffee and found it much more productive to be collaborative with her through a screen and through texting than through a face-to-face, because I just found that we both went kind of off the script. I was managing offices in Providence and in Boston and in Washington and obviously in New York and Pittsburgh and Phoenix. And so it's changed completely. I don't need to be anywhere. I say now that I live sometimes Connecticut, sometimes Tucson, and mostly the cloud. But I definitely work in the cloud. Wherever I can go, where I have access to Wi-Fi. So flying back from Costa Rica yesterday, the hardest part of my day was the 3 hours when I was outside of U.S. range, but on JetBlue, they don't do Wi-Fi when you're outside of U.S. territory.
Wow.
And so I felt myself wiggling like, oh my God, I have people to supervise. It's like, everybody else would be wiggling in their chair. I'm wiggling with my thumbs like, oh my God, I got to get this done. So I think the thing that made me most agile was I really gave up on place. I mean, it led me to understand that as long as somebody is in it with you in a conversation, in it with you in a problem-solving exercise, in it with you in terms of shared beliefs or values, you're going to be fine. Place doesn't matter.
Right, but that's also what you've. And I suppose in many respects, for you and the people who worked with you on this book, their view of Agile PR also does find its way into your client work and how you serve your clients today. Yes.
Well, we serve up teams from wherever the best people are. I couldn't care less about the location. Occasionally, a client will say to me, so we're working for a fabulous company in Boston. We have a great team. It's a national team. But they did say to me, can we have one person from Boston who can run cross town? And I thought, I really like these people. I'm going to indulge in that. I don't know why they need it, but I'm going to indulge them. And guess what? She's been on the team for 3 weeks. She's yet to be asked to go across town.
That's right.
But it's like
That's
the
great.
indulgence of it. It's like they think they want this, so I think I have to give it to them because I like them. But no, so I think, yes, our client work is very much, it's reflective also of, look, some of our people are at stages in their life where weekends are off limits to them. Other people are at stages of their lives where they'd much rather come in at 10:30 in the morning and they don't mind, being involved with 3 openings a month. And so it's also about staffing to people's, their body clocks and their team clocks.
Yeah.
So I always say, it's like the best people I have are people who figure out how to outsource them to somebody else in another time zone.
Great. And so there are 3 concepts in the book. Of course, there are many, but there were 3 that kind of caught my attention that I wanted to talk with you about today. First is that you said PR is always about relationships, but now it's really much more about what sort of relationships and with whom. So talk to us a little bit about that evolution.
So I think PR, when I started, my first job was in PR many years ago. My second job was in PR many years ago. I think in those days it was about going out to lunch with people. It was about getting to know people. It was about relating to people in a humanistic way that led to a commercial relationship. And today I think we're much more transactional. So I think the best relationships are forged around KPIs, around key performance indicators, around you asked me to place your story here, and your goal is to reach X number of million people here, so we're going to accomplish it. Our relationship is forged in a shared experience and then the shared value of that experience. So I think that's a big change. I don't think they're the same. We have a lot more transactional relationships. I might speak to somebody between my fingers and my email and my voice a little bit. I might speak to 300 people in a day. Growing up in this business, I'd be lucky if I could have spoken to 14 people in a day.
Sure.
I would have been, I was on the phone all day long. So I think that's a big difference to me is relationships are much more relationships around performance. So they're performance-based relationships.
Interesting. Okay. So second one, you talk about crafting the news.
Yes.
And of course means spotting trends, which of course is nothing new to you, and keeping up with pop culture and then using those insights to put out routine news in more compelling ways, creating opportunities and coattailing on relevant breaking news. And basically, this is where right in chapter 1, you talk about this is a critical concept that you lead with in this book. So tell us a little bit about crafting the news and how you, A, came up with that language for it, and B, why it's so essential that you led essentially the book with that concept.
So to me, crafting the news is a little bit about, in 2006 or 2007, I think I came out with a very cool phrase, sleep is the new sex. And I think in the last couple of months, as we're watching mattress wars be fought, everybody from Mattress King and Mattress Firm to Casper to Sealy Beauty Rest, et cetera, they're all fighting it out. Well, I don't know if you saw the article in the New York Times a couple of weeks ago around sleep, and I now argue sleep is a new status symbol. I would never brag to you how tired I am, but I might brag to you if I had a fabulous night's sleep. I might say, oh my God, and it's like people complain about how tired they're. So this idea that we're now trading off in sleep experiences. For many clients that are in and around that place for respite, it's a fabulous, fabulous place to live. So being part of creating that trend, the conversation back in 2007, when it was about, sleeper beds on airlines, you wanted to have the best nights across the Atlantic. It was about medications like Ambien and Lunesta. And today it's much more about perfectly curated sleep experiences. It's about Fitbits and other things that help you to bring technology to good night's sleep. It's about, obviously, that designer outfit for your bed, not for. So it's the idea that you're going to put money into home furnishings versus your personal furnishings.
No, that's really interesting. And no, I think, and what I love about it again is you really looking at context and figuring out how can we craft news based on the context and based on what's next in a way that can be really powerful. So.
And the crafting part is really important. It's not enough to just kind of throw. We used to go to brainstorms, and I feel like brainstorms are crazy in a weird way because you're sitting around. If you're not riffing with great people, it's not very brainy at all. It's totally painful. If you're riffing with people, organize it. It's probably happening over the table where you're grabbing a coffee. It's probably happening all day long. And I feel like crafting the news is a little bit the same thing. Either you see the world. So look, I saw the Caitlyn Jenner story 1,000 different ways that maybe other people didn't see it. I write this column for Forbes, and so I know how some PR people see things now because they're always pitching me, and I'm like, oh my God, what a terrible pitch. And I always feel like I don't write very many, but when I write them, like I'm writing them to be on the cover of the Daily Telegraph or on the cover of the Time Style section. I might only come up with 4 a year. I better see it in one of those places. I'm going to be devastated because I'm trying to create like real news. And so just the idea about, when I mentioned Caitlyn Jenner for a second, I think this idea around celebrities and privacy and the whole idea about the world in which we are living, I think it opens up a lot of stories that go way beyond the story of transgender. It almost is, so I'll give you another one, an anti-smoking story I've been playing with for a long time. I've never really pushed it out there. The number one thing kids care about, they care about their dog or their cat. You know how you can get kids to stop smoking? Talk to them about secondhand smoke and how it's killing their family pet. How many years is it going to take off a pet's life? And you'll see people stop smoking and stop talking. And so I think it's those kind of stories. Now, where did I first get that idea? Is from watching coverage in the summer of hurricanes. And this thing I always see people posting on is what happened to people's pets during those horrible.
Sure.
And so I start to link these unrelated things to try to come up with a different way of approaching crafting the news.
So who influenced you over the years to think that way, to kind of connect the dots and to be kind of take that approach in terms of how your mind works?
No, I don't know that I could see any one individual did. I worked at great advertising agencies where the crazier the thing you thought of, the better, as long as it was crazy smart, as long as it was crazy exploitable. I suppose it goes back to maybe the Chiat Day influence where people like Jay Chiat, like Bob Koopman were there kind of coaching you to be you had to be afraid of being ordinary. You didn't have to be afraid of being stupid. So you could say something really stupid as long as it was extraordinary. It was okay. So, and I also think, look, there's a lot of affirmation that comes when you say something crazy and then it takes off. Then people assume maybe you're not so crazy. So I'd say it's that. I mean, maybe a little bit of it is, I was always pretty unconventional. I never worried about getting fired. I never worried about more conventional things. In fact, the only time I've really ever had a conventional job was the only job I've really ever had that I didn't totally love. And it was just one 18-month stint at an agency where it was conventional enough. I felt like they were saying, oh, you can't do that. I'm not anyone who's ever going to break enough of a rule that you need to tell me what I can't do because my own personal boundaries are tight enough. So I'd say it wasn't maybe individuals, it was work environments.
Okay. And, but one of the things I think also that differentiates the way, not only how you think about something, but the fact that you give it language and can translate it to people, whether it's back, I think, in 1994 with metrosexual or other,
That's
these concepts, right?
Yeah,
right?
yeah, that's 2003. Yeah. Well, I like for every word I had that took off, it's like there's a lot of them there's a lot of them that never did. Some of it's saying the word, some of it's merchandising the word, some of it's amplifying the word. A lot of things that now I go back to as part of agility, I sort of learned along the way. So, for example, there's a phrase I think I used in the book back in 2000. Are you there?
Yeah. Yep.
The phrase I used for the book back in 2005, called SHEO, and it was SHEO.
Yeah.
And it was a very good idea, but I never merchandised it properly, so it never went anywhere. The difference was with metrosexual, I kind of knew exactly what I was doing. It was because I had a book coming out called Buzz, and I wanted to prove you could create buzz. So it was much more intentional, much more, I think all of life comes down to the three plots in literature: man versus man, man versus nature, man versus himself. In that particular case, my version of nature was the media. I wanted to see if I could make the media do what I wanted them to do. And certainly with metrosexual, they did.
Nice. And they did.
Yeah, no, they did. And it's going to be on my tombstone because I can't get rid of it
now. So the third concept that I wanted to talk about, because a lot of my career too was spent, I owned my own agency for 5 years before I sold it. I also worked for a large multinational firm. And there was always this issue with regard to, as you describe it in the book, between outputs and outcomes. And oftentimes we charge people for our outputs, for the number of hours we put in and the activities we do, and yet we are evaluated and judged on the outcomes. And it's always been one of those things. So talk a little bit about outputs and outcomes and how you see it today, particularly after the years you've been in the business. And
it's the bane of all of our existence. Because oftentimes, and Jay Shyatt used to say to me, he said to me, I never forgot, this is probably 25 years ago, he'd say, Marian, don't tell anyone how quickly you got it done. Go to the beach for 3 weeks and come back and look really tired and sweaty. And I'd be like, okay, I don't really understand, but okay. And that's seared in my head of, if you get it done in 15 minutes, people are going to devalue it because you spent 15 minutes. But actually, I feel like with some of these things, I spent the last 35 years getting ready for these 15 minutes. Now, I just did something in saying that was completely antithetical to what I said to you earlier. I don't care what someone did for 35 years. But so the outcome and output problem is, if experience is your guide, you still better have a lot of good new stuff to share. If your newness is your strength, it's your energy, your passion, you're brand new, you better have really breakthrough thinking, and you better learn how to present it in a way that can get over the hurdle of, you're 12 years old, why are you speaking up? So I think it's really a dilemma. As an agency, I hate the fact we sell hours. I can't stand it. My finance team loves it. It's a constant emotional battle for me because I'd rather be paid for results. But that's not the way the world works.
No, that's so true. And it's, I think, on both sides. Not only sometimes is it that, something can take a very little bit of time. Like when they talk about why is a senior level person versus a junior level person, and boy, you cost that much more, but maybe I can do it in 5 minutes versus, someone else who may take many hours to do it. But I think the other side of it is value, right? Oftentimes agencies aren't really always compensated for the value they bring. They might charge something in the thousands of dollars for, a big idea that's worth millions to their client, which I think is another kind of dilemma with regard to outputs and outcomes.
The other part of it too is some work is really easy and some work is torturously hard.
Mm-hmm.
So, for example, a friend brought us a new product called the Barnacle. It's a new yellow thing. It goes on your windshield to stop you from parking illegally.
Okay.
And we're paid next to nothing. And we've done everything, including getting a segment on Modern Family, I think it is. And we've been on the Daily Mail front screen. It's incredible. But now, to be perfectly honest, and I've said this directly to clients, I'm sharing with you, it probably takes us 5 minutes because it's the world's coolest product. And these are the world's coolest clients. And we're so lucky to even have clients that are this normal and this nice, because it means the media loves you because you're giving them something that they value. Well, and then there's other times when you're working on, let's say, XYZ chemical product or XYZ automotive innovation, and it doesn't matter how smart or personable or anything in the world you are, it is really hard selling because there's category knowledge, there's consumer knowledge, So it's hard. And look, I mean, if I were going to do it over again, would I be part of a huge global corporation? Well, I love the way big businesses work, but I also love the idea that sometimes I could just get paid a windfall if I just worked on something on spec until I produced the result. Can't do that in a big company. It's out of the way we think about being funded and being paid.
Mm. So we've talked about, a few concepts in the book. One of the things about this book, though, is it's really rich. It's really packed with a lot of wonderful content. If there are one or two other concepts that you want to make sure that our listeners realize are part of this book, an important part of this book, what would they be?
So I think that cause is the new celebrity, but if you are working on a cause, a celebrity really helps you break through the clutter. So an example of that might be the support we provided to UN Women around gender equality, but Emma Watson did all the heavy lifting. I mean, when you're the PR person or the PR people who are working on behalf of gender equality, but your spokesperson is Emma Watson, it's a pretty good gig. So I think there's examples like that where, again, people really are giving organizations, they're giving brands, they're giving lifestyles a full integrated report card. So you better be good and decent. Bad people are not going to do well right now. Well, I mean, I guess they are doing well, but they're not going to do well in that same, they're not going to break through the clutter in the same way. You can't greenwash things today either because everybody's communicating about everything. The other thing is the idea, and I learned it when I worked at WPP, I once saw an email that Sir Martin Sorrell sent, and it really had profound impact on me. It basically said in response to something, get tougher skin. But I do think that in this age that we're living in, we need to help our clients have tougher skin. We need to have tougher skin ourselves. We need to teach our people to have tougher skin because everything communicates means everybody says whatever they're feeling at that moment. And people are much less likely to say nice things and say nasty things. And so I think that's an important learning also is that toughen up because you're entering a pretty brutal, combative world.
For sure. Marian Salzman, thank you so much for joining us. I want to remind everyone, Agile PR, available anywhere that you can buy a book by Marian Salzman and her team at Havas PR. So thank you so much for joining us today. It was great.
Thank you.
You bet.
Thanks for joining us today. To learn more about Peer Advantage, to submit questions to Leo and our guest, and to subscribe to the Year of the Peer podcast, please visit us at leobottary.com. It's leobottary.com. This podcast is produced by me, Randy Cantrell, hosted, of course, by Leo Bottary. Music provided by Kevin MacLeod, Vibe Ace. Licensed under Creative Commons by Attribution 3.0 license.